here with Paul Miners, and this is the Kicking Ass Taking Names podcast. We're going to be talking about people who are doing extraordinarily well. I first saw Paul when I was on YouTube looking for help using Pipedrive, and I think that's actually how most people probably found you primarily. But what I ended up doing was joining your master's group. I've been in that group for over 2 years, almost I think 3 years now. And it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did. I mean, the business decision is incredible value for just going in and to work with people who are like-minded. I mean, you and Kay and all the other guys who are really regulars there. And so, yeah, we've had some good conversations and a lot has changed. And I can tell you a little bit about what I've done in the past few years. I know we haven't talked too much, but obviously this is about you. So today I want to focus primarily on you. The whole premise for the show, this is going to be one of our few online segments, but primarily it's going to be in person. But the whole premise for the show is going to be that, we're highlighting people who are awesome and who have brands. They built their brand, they're online, they're growing. I mean, almost anybody that I'm bringing on, and primarily everybody I've had is either a big brand builder or they have a online influence or they're building something, right? And they're getting to something. So the whole idea is like, what can get you, how can we relate that to an audience, right? I mean, everybody here, there's a lot of people who want to start something, want to grow something. So I want to talk about you. I want to make it kind of conversational. I want to be too businessy, but I also do want to put in some points of inspiration that like, hey, anybody out there can start, anybody out there can be doing these things that, all these influencers and brands are doing. And so I'd love to get started with just an intro about how you got into it. What's got you started on YouTube? Because I know you've built a, probably around 30K subscriber fan base on YouTube. And that's pretty impressive. And just also, what had you start the particular subject you're doing? And if you want to take it away.
Yeah, sure. So for those that don't know who I am, I'm my title changes a little bit, I suppose, depending on who you talk to, but I guess I'm a productivity consultant. We specialize in a few very particular bits of software. So I actually got started helping people with Asana, which is a project management tool. But now we help people with Pipedrive, which is how you found me. Pipedrive is a sales CRM. And we also do quite a bit with Zapier as well. Zapier is an automation tool. And so how I got into this was, I always wanted to work for myself. I studied marketing and entrepreneurship at university, came out, got my first job in marketing at an e-commerce store here in New Zealand. But really that was a stepping stone just to learn, get my feet wet and kind of while I was finding what I wanted to do. And it's funny, my goals have changed over the years. When I was a lot younger and at university, I wanted to have a big business. This is at the time where Facebook was popular. It was sort of like 2010, 2011, I was at uni. Facebook was popular, really at the height of its game. Mark Zuckerberg was a hero. And I thought, wow, like technology, social media is kicking off. I want to do something big like this.
Back when
now I couldn't be further from that. Like I'm not motivated. I don't want to have a big business. I don't actually want to employ a lot of people. It was actually reading the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss's book, that opened my eyes to this idea of having a lifestyle business where you can earn a great income, but actually, what you earn and how you build you need to be building your business around the lifestyle that you want, because you hear stories of people burning out all the time. I actually saw a reel on Instagram last night of this guy on a podcast. Like, I don't know who it was. It literally just popped up and he was like crying his eyes out because he had wasted years watching his daughter grow up through his phone because he's always working, earning a ton of money.
Oh, I've seen that.
So you saw that one?
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah, saying he missed his daughter's swim meets and he's like missed out on his daughter's childhood. And I was like, wow, I don't want that. And so anyway, read the 4-Hour Workweek. How I got started with Asana was when I was working in that marketing job at the e-commerce company. We'd tried a few different project management tools. And me being someone who's naturally sort of into productivity, I found Asana actually on a podcast, listening to a podcast. And I kind of took it on myself to just figure it out, learn it, and showed it to the boss. We rolled it, long story short, we rolled it out to the entire company. I really led that. I was the champion really of that tool and trained everyone on how to use it. And it was a few years later, I was thinking, what could I do? How could I earn some money online? I'd started my blog and I was trying to sell digital products, but not earning enough. And I thought, well, maybe I could do some consulting. Maybe other businesses would be willing to pay to get support with a tool like Asana. So that's how I got started. And I was actually using Pipedrive at the time as well in my job for sales. And so quickly started doing the same thing. And really it all just snowballed from there. I just tried to think, how can I reach people who need help with these tools? I mean, Google AdWords was one thing that I'd learned a lot about in my marketing job. I thought, let me target some very specific keywords to get people in front of people who need help, but also YouTube, because YouTube's the second biggest search engine in the world. Pipedrive, Asana, they lend themselves really well to content on YouTube because people are going to go to YouTube to learn, how do I use Asana? How do I use Pipedrive? So I thought, let me just be valuable there. Let me produce content. And that now is, one of the main ways that people find me. And here I am today. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So was YouTube the first platform that you were officially on that was public, like social media wise?
Well, social media wise, yes. I mean, I was listed on a few expert directories, like I did Clarity, and I think I may have tried Upwork, but that's really not a great space to be in because you're basically racing to the bottom in terms of price, and there's a lot of idiots on there. And so I don't want to be playing in that sandbox. But in terms of social, I really don't do any very much social at all. I don't do any LinkedIn. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I've just found that YouTube works for me, and I'm going to double down on that, because if you think about the persona of my target market, like they're not going to be browsing Instagram like, oh, I want to learn Asana better, and oh, this guy pops up. It's not really the channel to engage with business owners. YouTube is where people go to learn about these tools. So rather than try and be everywhere, I focused on a few channels that work well for my target customer.
Right. And so looking at being on YouTube, and then now, because I know when your brand originally started, you were productivity consulting, but I know that from me working with you and your brand, you've also been doing the whole master's group and a little bit of coaching. I mean, is that kind of the direction that you're heading towards, or?
Not really. Like I've always had a few different components to my business. So there is the consulting side, which is Asana, Pipedrive, and Zapier, but I do sell some digital products as well. So I have a productivity course that I sell. I have my How to Become a Virtual Consultant program, which is, I think, the one that you signed up for. Because really, after I kind of got a bit of success, like just basically for me, success was being able to quit my job and support me and my wife at the time. Now we have 2 kids. It was just being able to sustain it, just being able to quit my job was the first goal. And so I thought, well, let me make this course and share my process, what I've learned, and help other people to do build their consulting business. So you did the program. My best success story, I think, is still Gareth Pronovost, one of my still very early customers, who he did the same thing with Airtable. He just became an Airtable consultant, made YouTube videos. And now, gosh, last time I spoke to him, I think he was pulling in like 50K a month or something, and he actually, I think he left his job, or maybe he quit his job. I can't remember. And so it's great just being able to help people like that, just by sharing, this is what I've learned, and if I can do it, so can you. And so there's a few different parts to my business. There's the consulting, there's the digital product sales, do some affiliate marketing. I've always tried to have income coming in from a few different streams.
Nice. Okay. And not to step over it. You did say you have kids. You have 2 kids now?
Yeah. 2 boys, 4 and about 4 months. Yeah.
Okay. You got a new one then.
Yeah.
Nice.
Busy times.
Well, so currently you're located in New Zealand, right?
Yep.
New Zealand. And so what time is it there over there for you?
It's 11:15 here on Tuesday. So you're on Central Time, aren't you?
I'm on Mountain Standard, but we're on the same as Pacific. So right here, it's on quarter to 3.
So you're like 21 hours behind me. So we're so far away, we're nearly a day ahead.
Yeah, in the future. So what's I guess what's next for your brand? I know that you've been growing, and you've been working with. Have you been going more towards enterprise, or are you more, sticking to?
The last few years, it's really been about streamlining the system. Like I've brought on more outside support. Like I used to be a solo operator. And then a couple of years ago, I hired a friend of mine who was kind of in between work, and I knew he had a bit of experience with Zapier. So I thought, hey, why don't you come try working with me, do some Zapier work for me? Now he's the automation arm of my business. He does all of our automation stuff. He's brilliant with Zapier, much better than I am. And that's just he was a novice when he got started, but he's really been able to go deep on that now because he can spend a bit more time on it. So he's great. And then that really gave me the confidence to hire a few other contractors who can help do some of the one-on-one consulting calls that we do for our Pipedrive and Asana clients. So instead of me being the bottleneck for everything, just having some outside help be able to do that has been really transformational. It means I can focus on sales, looking after customers, and whatever, even though I was the solo consultant and I'm Paul Miners, who people see on YouTube, actually, people don't really care about working with me. Like, as long as, I can vouch for one of the experts on my team, people just care about finding a solution, whether it's learning Pipedrive better or, optimizing Asana. So they're happy to work with my team. And so that's really been, for the last couple of years, it's just been about transitioning, building the team, streamlining the system. So now in terms of like my goals, I really don't have many goals from here. Like, I'm not trying to hit like a revenue target. I'm happy with the amount that I earn. But I have grown every year because I've always made the business more efficient. I actually wrote about this and spoke about it on my own podcast recently, is that I haven't tried to grow my business for years. I've only tried to make it more efficient. And by making your business more efficient, by streamlining the systems, by finding opportunities where there's waste, whether that's time or money, and just optimizing everything, you end up growing, funnily enough. So I have grown, even though that hasn't been the goal. And I'm not working any more hours. It's just been through constantly looking at the different parts of the business and like, how can we streamline that? How can I automate this? What's taking up my time? How can I improve that? Yeah. And that's what I'm continuing to do. I'm in terms of the next 12 months, I'll just still be doing that. Yeah. Just trying to make things better.
Most people are finding you then through YouTube and is that your primary channel still?
Yeah. YouTube's still pretty up there. Yep.
And so what do you say to people who are new to this and they want to get started, and pretty much, it's like the basic, I was at one point, I was, looking for some help on I want to be a virtual consultant. I ended up joining your program. There was a lot of helpful things that along the way, and especially the master's group that really helped. But what specifically do you tell people who are new and want to get started and grow in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like finding your idea, if you're not even at that stage where you know what you want to do, I always think it's good to start by thinking about like, what are you good at? If you want to get into sort of coaching, consulting, that kind of space, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? Because ultimately, you're not going to build a long-lasting business if you don't enjoy the work. Like, there's no point even trying. So you have to have a skill. You have to enjoy that skill, and it has to be something that people are willing to pay for. So normally, like the B2B space, if it's something like Asana, is good because businesses want to pay for that. You can sell to consumers, but it can be a bit harder convincing a consumer to part with their money compared to a business where it's a bit easier to justify the ROI, but everyone's different. But that's usually the sort of trifecta you're looking for when coming up with an idea is, what do I enjoy? What am I good at? And what are people willing to pay for? And it's funny with the Asana, my origin story, I enjoy productivity. I'm just naturally, it's something I'm interested in. So I tick that box. Asana, it was actually my boss at the time who told me, oh, Paul, you're really good at, like, he saw me, he sat in on these workshops that I would do internally for our team, showing them Asana. He said, oh, you're really good at teaching people how to use the tool. Like, you explain it clearly. You're good at answering questions. You're good at like managing the room. Like, that's a really good skill. And it's something nobody had ever told me before, I suppose, because I'd never been in that position before where I was actually coaching or consulting. But he gave me that feedback, and it was something new. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't really know that. So that was good. So I enjoyed it. And it's a skill that I had, like, okay, I can teach people about this. And it's something that people are willing to pay for. My boss paid me a bonus at the time. He paid me $1,200 New Zealand. He's like, look, what you did setting up Asana, fantastic. And that was, those three things. I was like, great, tick, tick, tick. Maybe other people want to get started. Maybe other people need help with Asana. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny because I think that's how I got started with your course, was that I was at an insurance job and I was actually working with the insurance company on their marketing. And I said, well, if you guys want to work with me, I said this ahead of time. I said, I'd like to have like a contingent contract where where I help you with the renewal season because it's very busy in the winter. And then after that renewal season, I'll actually take over your marketing. And then I'm kind of exiting out of this position and entering to this new contract with you where your business can do, business with my business and I can help run your marketing. And so I built a website for them. And they ended up becoming like a general broker. They kind of changed the brokerage and sold the old business. So it worked perfectly because we both transitioned together. And so I think that is how I think a lot of people find out too, what they're looking or what they want to do. Because a lot of times I tell people, if people are like, hey, how did you figure out what you want to do? It's like, I looked at my resume and I just looked at all the previous jobs I did. And I looked at where I liked and where I didn't like. And these are the jobs that I liked. And these are the type of tasks that I did at the job that I liked. And that's what I decided to kind of go towards more, because it's almost like we don't know, we're subconsciously picking things because it's almost like when we start, we're not saying, what do I love? But we're saying, what do I not hate to do? That's how I figure out what I will do. It's like, I decided when I first started doing, sales consulting and business to business development, I said, what do I not hate to do? And what I don't hate to do is introducing new people to new products, right? Like I always have been a little bit more of like an affiliate person and a connector. It's also led to the reason why I wanted to start this podcast is like, I'm new right now. This is a new experience, but it also is another opportunity for me to connect people. That's what I feel like I'm one of my best strengths is. And so for me, I'm doubling down on that the same way that, you've doubled down on YouTube and had tremendous results. And so speaking on that, I mean, what exactly do you like? How do you view, a little bit zoomed out of like the business perspective and just more personal? How do you view like what you want to do with your life? I know you're also a family man. You have your wife and your kids, and you just got married, correct?
No, we've been married since 2015.
Okay, so you guys got married.
Maybe when we met, I'd just been married.
Right. No, I do have another buddy who just got married, and so I always think, okay, did he get married or did he get married? Because I haven't been keeping track of the timelines. But I do know that you have 2 kids, and so what is it that you want to do for the rest of your life? Because I know you could do this for the rest of your life, and I'm sure.
It's a good question, which I'm still figuring out myself. Like, I think for the next few years, we're building a house right now, so that's keeping me occupied, and that'll mean I keep the business going for a little while longer. Just obviously got to kind of finance that. But like, I could definitely see getting to a point with this business where I might want to bring in a business manager, or even maybe talk to my colleague Warwick, who does my automation, and see, like, does he want to take a bigger role in the business, and maybe see if I can step out a little bit. So somebody could take over kind of that sales, that face of the business. That might mean having to rebrand, away from paulminers.com to be more of like an agency. So I don't know, very early days in terms of that, still undecided if I'll even do that, but that's something that I've sort of mulled over, is like me taking a smaller role and having somebody else step in to fill my shoes, so to speak. And that way I can keep the business going, keep it ticking over, but just free up a lot of my time. And then that would give me time to work on other things, whether that's starting something new, or maybe even just taking a break for a while. Like, I went straight from studying at school to university, straight into work, straight into my business. Apart from a little sort of 6 months where my wife and I we went traveling, and I was actually starting my business at the time, I've kind of gone from one thing to the next. So I don't know, maybe I'll take a few years just to kind of play golf and go surfing and figure out what I want to do. Yeah, I don't know.
There's no shortage of things to do in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Outside, that's one of my bucket list things of where I want to go. Is I want to go, like, I haven't been to Australia, New Zealand, and then a lot of Northern Europe I haven't been to.
Yeah.
But I'd like to go to like all those places. It's like, that's crazy over there, man. I remember part of what was crazy is when I first joined, and then till now, there's been a huge thing, which has been in the middle, obviously, COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so how did that look in New Zealand? I mean, what was going on there?
I mean, New Zealand's response was pretty strict. Like, in 2020, they had this 0 tolerance response, where it was like, when we got our first few cases, we went to like a level 4 lockdown pretty quickly, which is like, stay at home, work at home, only essential workers can go out. Yeah, it was like a pretty strict lockdown. And I kind of panicked at the time. I was like, oh man, everything's shutting down. Like the economy is going to collapse. My business is going to, demand is going to dry up. So I was kind of a bit nervous, but actually it turned out to be really good because like people need help with their systems and working remote. It didn't affect me much because I was working in a co-working space. I just switched to working at home, but all my work is virtual anyway. So it really didn't impact me. The lockdowns though, looking back now, it definitely feels like a massive overreaction. I think a lot of people are waking up to that and looking at how it's been managed. It feels like a big overreaction. Even last year, this time a year ago, we had a big lockdown when the Delta outbreak was coming here. And you can see the impact now. Like there are parts, if I go down the road to some of these like shopping areas where there's cafes and stuff, like there are shops that are shut and cafes that have closed down, and it's a real shame. I think obviously the state the economy is in right now, like globally, not just New Zealand, but like inflation's running hot. You've got unemployment's starting to tick up. People are just generally upset, with the state of things and how being told what to do. So I don't, it's really tricky to say, because if they'd have managed it differently here, we would have had more more cases in hospitals, and hospitals would have jammed up, and maybe that would have been more deaths. But I don't know. So I think our response was, I think it was an overreaction. I think there would have been a smarter, I don't know what it is, but there must be some smarter way to manage it where you can do more targeted lockdowns for people that are vulnerable, whether that's people who are elderly, keep them sort of a little bit isolated and let everyone else kind of go back to work. And if you want to take the risk going out into the real world and take the risk of catching COVID, that's your choice. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit on it at the moment.
Yeah, I think I was actually 15 miles away from the first US outbreak when it first.
Oh, wow.
I was right there. So I was in Seattle. I was actually in Kirkland at the time working as a security guard. And that was like a part-time thing I was doing outside of consulting. But it was crazy because I remember they said that this happened at some nursing home. And I remember I was like, okay, well, where's that? And they're like 15 miles away. I was like, that's like a 10 to 20 minute drive from me.
Yeah.
And people were just spraying doors and hiding. And, they're like, oh yeah. And everybody kind of was confused because they're like, should we be freaking out and running, or should we just be kind of like cautious?
Yeah.
And everybody, they have to work their job and they have to do obviously their work. So people didn't want to like overreact, but you can tell definitely people were like, oh, this is like, I mean, we didn't know if it was like the next, wave of like something that's going to kill a bunch of people or something. And you hear about that stuff, but luckily it didn't turn out that way. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. The frustrating thing about all this is we just don't know what the truth is,
Right.
Like in the beginning, scientists and health organizations didn't really understand fully the virus and how bad it would be. So you might be able to say, well, the response was justified because we thought it could be really bad and hospitals don't have capacity for everyone to get sick. Now we're in a situation where we've got vaccines, we've got drugs that help to treat it. And so it feels a bit like a big overreaction now, but at the time, was that justified? Maybe, I don't know. How big of a role does the media play in like making people generally feel just fear and anxious about the whole thing? Like we had daily press conferences here during the lockdowns with the Prime Minister getting on, talking about the case numbers, what we're doing, when we're going to ease up. Like it was a great PR opportunity for her to get FaceTime with the public every single day, right before the election, which was last year. So, but then, scientists get it wrong all the time. And now we're facing the consequences of it. And, it's funny, like a year ago, governments and central banks were saying, oh, the inflation that we're starting to see it's not so bad, like it's transitory, we're just seeing this minor increase in prices, but it's going to come down again pretty soon. Here we are 12 months later, we're seeing massive inflation at the moment, and people are really hurting. Like, I mean, it's not we have inflation here, but it's okay because we're a bit more independent with our power. I know in the UK and Europe, where they're a lot more reliant on like that Russian gas, people are really struggling right now. And then so you look back at what we were being told in the media and politicians were telling us a year ago about, oh, it's transitory inflation. obviously they got that. They either were stupid and got it completely wrong, or they were lying to us. In either case, it doesn't look great for them.
Yeah,
and so I think the big thing for the last couple of years is just trust and faith in media and governments. I think that has just been completely obliterated.
Yeah, and I think that's the cost of doing something like this, right? I mean, when we talk about it now, you think you would also think about like censorship going on and things that are happening with people. And I know it's like, oh, well, that topic's going to be brought up, but it's like these things are not going to just go away, right? Like we've got to discuss them at some point. And so for me, like, it's just interesting because I like to hear everybody's perspective on that. I'm also kind of like, I want to poke the bear, and I want to like, there's an elephant in the room, everybody. And that's kind of how I see things. And it's just interesting because I'd like to be able to discuss those things. It's like, if we don't talk about them, where is everybody at? Where is their mindset at when it comes to that? Sometimes I think I run into people and they're on completely one end of the spectrum. And then, you meet somebody else and they're the exact opposite. And sometimes you're like, do I say something, or is it better to just not say anything?
Yeah.
And I genuinely do. I genuinely do try to stay in the middle, but it's kind of hard sometimes because certain things, they might have personally affected you, but then they didn't affect other people. And then certain things, they personally affected other people and they didn't really affect you.
And I think our views changed. Like, definitely when the lockdowns were happening in the early days, I was like, because we didn't know how bad it was or what the right reaction was. It was kind of like, well, let's lock down. And I was more supportive initially. But I mean, hindsight is a brilliant thing, isn't it? Now we look back and how it's being managed now and how some countries reacted completely differently. Where was it? Was it Denmark or
Sweden,
Norway or Sweden, or one of those like Scandinavian countries, which they were didn't really lock down, stayed a lot more open. And I don't know if I'm not going to say they were fine, but like, it was a completely different way of managing things. And so in hindsight, you look back and you do wonder, was this a big overreaction? Was it the right response, especially considering the economic consequences that we're seeing now and how people's livelihoods, people lost jobs, people had to get a vaccine that they didn't believe in because they were mandated to, like, Yeah,
I had to ask, and it's like I did have to ask because I know you're in New Zealand. You're on the other side of the world. I have to ask about these things because these are like, it's just so radically different, right? From country to country. I mean, one of my friends just came back from China, and he said that it's worse now than it was years ago. Yeah. And that's the reaction that China's been having, apparently, when it comes
It's like Black Mirror. I saw a video the other day. I mean, you can't always believe exactly what you see on the internet, of course, but like, I saw a video of a drone flying between two apartment buildings with a speaker telling people to return to their homes because they're on lockdown. I'm like, man, that is some Black Mirror stuff, like.
Yeah. Well, Paul, I mean, we're about the time where we're gonna end, close up for today. I appreciate it, and this is great because, I mean, like I said, this is the whole thing. The whole premise is we're just gonna get to know people. We're gonna get to know their views, and then I want to know what they did, why they did it, right? So, this is honestly one of my first episodes. I know I have to like looking back on it. I'm gonna look back and I'm gonna say, you know what, like. I could have, like, why didn't I ask about this, or why didn't I do this?
That's all good, because that's what it's about. Like, I've talked about this before. When I look back at my early YouTube videos and I'm embarrassed, you will look back on this interview and you might be embarrassed one day. That's okay, because it means you're getting better. Right. Like, if I look back at my early YouTube videos, I didn't do any editing. There was no picture in picture, or even when I did start recording with me on the screen, the lighting was terrible. I was using my built-in MacBook camera. It was awful. But it's only by doing something again and again and again, and now I've done hundreds of videos. It's like, I'm actually quite pleased with them now. But you have to go through, you have to suck in the beginning to get better. Yeah, and that's it for me. I'm pretty excited for this, and I appreciate it because just to connect with more people, to talk with more people about what they're doing. I mean, that's all what it's all about. No, congratulations on starting the podcast. Well done. Thank you. Yeah, they say that good conversations, good life. That's one of the quotes that I've heard. Is you have a life is comprised of the conversations that you have, and if you're having good conversations and you're being productive moving forward, right? Then you end up having a good day, and a good day
by another good day is a good life. So
Awesome.
all right. Well, I appreciate the time, Paul, and hopefully we can maybe reconnect and do like an in-person one day.
Yeah, I would love that. Thanks, Shaquille.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.